my father just said, be the first one in the office and the last one to leave. And I was. That's energy that's meant to be on Living Rich. I just had one of those moments at Sloan Kettering, and I just would wake up every day and give gratitude for three things. And that really was my medicine.
Hello and welcome to Living Rich Sirop. This is the show where we help you get back in touch with that truth, that magic that already exists within. And my guest today knows all about that magic. My guest today is Ana Fabiano. She's a brand ambassador for the Rioja region in Spain. She's also a founder and an award-winning author of the book, The Wine Region of Rioja. Ana, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here, Rich. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I'm so excited. I know you just got back and there's lots of great things to talk about. We're really aligned from our previous conversation. But the first thing I want to tell you is I love wine from that region. And I just got introduced to it not that long ago. I was at the wine store, and this older gentleman who loves to talk, he says, "Have you tried Rioja?" I said, "No, I haven't." And I tried it. I was like, this is wonderful. And I'm really interested to hear how you got so involved with this region and this wine.
Well, just before I answer that question, puts a big smile on my face, Rich, because on countless trips to the United States and Canada, that's all I heard is, "I love Rioja." So more of that story is in that piece that we did. But my journey began as a student studying in Madrid during the transition to democracy. So it was a captivating, pulsating, electrifying time to be in a country, from just middle class America.
Wow.
And a Jersey girl, I was so stoked to hear your podcast with Everett Bradley because he's amazing, but also I'm a Jersey girl, and to hear both of your, intimate conversations about Bruce Springsteen and John Bon Jovi, it just made me smile and wiggle in my seat.
This is all Jersey. I'm only going to have Jersey people on the show from right now.
Yeah, so it was just a very, very potent time, and it just ignited in me a passion to want to be part of really privatizing a country and lifting back to its reign what was the world empire in the 16th century.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, and the first center that they opened was a wine center.
And what was it like being a woman in that world in that time?
Um, in the wine business at that time, it was like being a male nurse. I think in
Okay.
those years, if we look back, there are certain industries that, there were very few and far between women. And I, because it was a small office, had a lot of responsibility at a very young age. And it was in the Chrysler, the gorgeous Chrysler building, and I would just, walk across town on 42nd Street. And my father just said, be the first one in the office and the last one to leave. And I was, but I was so captivated by the work and what I was doing. So it was,
It was fun.
it was fun. It was fun. And
Yeah.
you felt that you were really part of making a difference. And so now, seeing all the growth that Spain has taken in many industries, taking hold, a lot of the products that were, exported in bulk and came into the US under mostly Italian labels. It's been very gratifying to see and to experience.
That's awesome. And, to me, one of the things I love about wine is what I
Yeah, tell
learned
me.
from when I was on a tour not that long ago in Santa Barbara, and
Nice.
we went on a tour to a big fancy place, and it was great. It was nice. And then we went to this little small place, and we had the best sommelier ever. And he was talking about the grapes, and he was like, the grapes that go through the harshest conditions make the best wines. And I was like, wow, if that's not a metaphor for life, I don't know what
Yeah.
is. It's exactly how it works as a human. When you get through the hard stuff, you come out of it so much stronger. And I love that about wine.
Yes, it is. When the vine struggles, it's when they're producing their best fruit. And, to just, and what you said, we grow, transitions stir the pot, right? But it's the place where we grow and a real transformation takes place. And that really happens so much in the winemaking in Rioja. And, I really liked also when you and Everett were talking about if it's okay if I
Oh,
make
totally. Yeah.
reference of it, because I'm a
Yep.
researcher and I just don't listen to something, I'll take notes or
Yep.
whatever. And there was just something so beautiful in when you both shared how music has this timeless piece, and you commented on how you had worked previously in comedy and how it's usually anchored in a trend or a period of time. And, often you can't have these comic jokes or things that will endure. And it made me think so much of, especially of a Rioja Gran Reserva, because they're wines that are only produced in Rioja, and they're only 4% of the production made from very coveted vineyards, and a blend and aged slowly in barrel and bottle before release from the winery. And they're such timeless wines. And the vintages are so special. They're not made in every year. So, you might buy a 2020, well, 2018 Grand Reserva that might just being released now, and that might be a year of a graduation or purchasing a home or reaching a milestone or baby birth or what it may be. And then to be able to enjoy that wine 5, 10, 20, 30 years from now, it's a beautiful way of honoring everything in this ecosystem.
Yes. And it brings you back just like I think your smell, your your taste. There's lots of things that can bring you back to a moment. So I've always loved that about travel. When you have a really great bottle of wine with a person that you really love, buying an extra bottle and taking it back, and then having it a few years later, because it'll take you back to that restaurant or that evening that you had. And it's just a wonderful thing because you can time travel through your senses.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just got back from the Rioja region, right? Like I think like a
Yes.
few days or maybe even yesterday.
Yeah, just a few days. It was the easiest transatlantic trip I ever took in my life, and I can't count how many I've made to Spain. I can really go through the Bilbao airport blindfolded. I just know exactly which way I have to turn, how many steps it's going to be. So it was a great trip. It was a New York-paced trip, but it was a great trip.
I've had
Yeah.
to do the same thing working in TV before I became a coach. I was often on the road and it's a big sacrifice. You know, you're doing it for your family, you're doing it for yourself. You always have to be accountable to yourself and you have to show your kids that you're going to put yourself first and you love yourself. But it's sometimes it can also feel like a lot of guilt when you're away. I know that for sure.
Yeah, they're very demanding years. They're very challenging years, and that has a little bit of the what to do with them. What I'm planning to do with my next phase of Rioja is really to be able to offer 100% sustainable, natural, limited edition pieces that can really enrich the home and help to add to what can really ground everyone in meaningful ways when you are sharing your home together and for generations to come, because that value system is there. But I think, part of what we deal with here is this pace.
Mm,
We just don't see this as much in many other countries, that, we are a society that has been really, fed a script or a dose of values. And many of us are trying to alter those, or next generations are trying to alter those, or and define them in different ways. But it's different. The bigger the better. Our portions at restaurants, the
right.
size of our
Yeah.
automobiles, the size of our appliances, the size of our homes, the size of everything,
Even
right?
how we work.
So
I mean, I see so many videos from people that are motivational speakers or people who are encouraging people to have more success. And their message is just work, 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 just work into the ground. You now's the time. Just and to me, that is a bad value. You know, hard
it
work is
is.
important, but man, if you're not sharpening that axe and you're not actually taking care of yourself, you're going to burn out if that's your method.
Exactly. And then, that is, it's just it's producing harm.
Hmm.
It's producing harm. And then what I've really come to realize is you know, there's a lot of unconsciousness. So, to raise awareness, to heal, we really just want everyone to really raise their consciousness, their awareness of of what they're doing, how they're living, what is their value system, how they're measuring success,
How can you bring
in
that
what
here?
ways.
How can we bring that from the Rioja region?
Well, I plan on be doing that and launching a new brand of a collection of really incredible pieces from Rioja in 2026. So I'm very excited about that. I've been working full time on that all throughout this year. And it really, really emanated from the wines. You
Mhm.
just said it all that I've heard from so many people, Rich. I love Rioja. And it took me a while. I was traveling so much through the USA and Canada to see that that statement was repeated so many times by everyone. And I had this illumination finally that it was the essence of Rioja that really is in the bottle. The value system of life, respect for the earth, pride, generational respect and care, custodianship of their land and their ecosystem. It really is in the bottle. And it
I so believe
really
that.
has to be shared and positioned in a different way. So
Collective energy really does end up in the product. I used to say that on TV shows
that's
when
great to hear you say that.
it's 100% true. We would have a staff, and when our staff loved each other, that love, you couldn't see it on camera, but it found its way into the program. And the audience loved the show in a different way. And even if we made great content, if the staff was not getting along and it didn't feel like a family, the show felt like it was off, no matter how good the content was. Energy finds its way into the product that is being made for sure.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and it really, really was something that was magnified to me this past week. I mean, every artisan that I met with, they were born and bred Riojans. They were from family businesses. They were generational individuals. They had, if they're choosing to work with me, it wasn't that they were accepting to work with me.
A big part of my story is overcoming a lot of stuff. I had a major health crisis. I was making a lot of money. Job went away. Was losing my house. My house was in pre-foreclosure. Going through a divorce. Really kind of was getting to what I would consider rock bottom,
Yes.
which was the beginning of my beautiful life that I have now, and which I'm so grateful for. I apply so much gratitude for all that stuff that happened now because it birthed this awesome life that I have. And you had a 40-month period where you went through it too. And I'm wondering how that impacted you as a human. Why don't you just share with us kind of what happened over the course of those 40 months?
Yeah, yeah. It was a series of traumatic events. My ex-husband was Kevin Zraly, who was the sommelier at Windows on the World, and he also the founder of the greatest wine school in American history, the Windows on the World Wine School. And that, of course, was on the top of the World Trade Center. And he wasn't there that day, but his wine school and his book and Windows was so much a part of his definition of himself and who he was and our family that it was very devastating. And just, we were in the eye or the core of it in our home, in our life. And this is an event that impacted the world, right? That the world has
Hmm.
talked about. So from that insider lens, it was um, devastating. So 20 months after that, my daughter, who's the youngest of my four, who's now 26 and a healthy, knock on wood, young woman who's past a cure point, who I'm going to go on the Flatiron and have dinner with tonight, which is really nice. Um, she was diagnosed with standard risk leukemia. And I had no previous experience with cancer, so it was very traumatic. It was very traumatic, and to be living at Memorial Sloan Kettering for over a year in a bed with my 15-kilo daughter, it's something that goes through my being every single day. You talk about how these things impact you, Rich. It's just it fleets through my being. I can't say my mind, my heart, my soul. It just fleets through my being every day. And it's a life-altering experience, not just from what you have with your child, but from everything you witness and who you're cohabitating with during that time. And then 20 months after that, while Adriana was still in cancer treatment, our house burned down in a standing total loss. And that was in the middle of 20 acres in the Hudson Valley in Ulster County, New York. So, the worst experience of terrorism in the United States, life or death of your child, and loss of shelter, I believe is very humbling, and to really defining humility from the Latin roots of humus, which means earth and land. It's humbling. It just takes you right down to that soil, that raw soil. So I think my most concern is how my children heal and the impact on them now as young adults or adults, and they're all wonderful human beings. But you have to accept that there's some purpose and everything that comes our way. But for me, I really use the RX of gratitude. I just had one of
Mm.
those moments at Sloan Kettering, and I just would wake up every day and give gratitude for three things, and that really was my my medicine that really took me through many, many years, was really looking at everything from a place of gratitude.
I had somebody on the podcast last week who her child, her son was in the ICU in the hospital for several months. I don't know exactly the amount of time. Said the same thing you just said. That's how she got through it, was gratitude.
Wow. Wow. That's potent, or that's energy that's meant to be on Living Rich.
Totally. I think it's meant for
Yeah.
all of us. I
You
was talking
know,
to my wife last night and I said, I think I know the answer. She said, to what? I said, to everything. She said, what is it? I said, it's gratitude. It really is. It's gratitude because I can tell you that things that didn't go so well in my life, that I would loop, negative loop and spin around in the past. Somebody mistreated me, really treated me poorly, or just was awful to me in some way. And I would hold on to those things and really feel hurt for a good deal of time. And I met somebody, a shaman, who told me, you need to apply gratitude to those situations. And I did, and they evaporated.
wow. Yeah.
It was so powerful. And also, everything that happens for you through your life makes you who you are. So if you're a great dad, which I consider myself to be, all of the
Yeah.
stuff along the way helped me get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. They are. I always like to quote, I think I even included it in my book, Maya Angelou. There's always find the rainbow in the cloud.
Oh, I love that.
It's I love her poetry. I love her, and there's always a rainbow in the cloud.
That's so funny that you said that. I was in Iceland. Did I have told you this before? Or no, I don't think I did. When I was in
No, I
Iceland,
don't think
I,
so.
I was in Iceland with my wife, and we were driving to the airport to pick up our oldest of the boys. He was flying in on his own because he had gone to something in Jersey beforehand. And so it was just the two of us, and our kids were still at the hotel, my daughter and our other two sons. And I was just talking about, it's been a tough 6 months growing a business. Financially, we're doing it, but it's been a bit of a tricky road. And I looked up and it was a huge rainbow, huge. We're
Oh,
heading towards the rainbow. And I think she spotted, she goes, we're heading towards the rainbow. I said, I know we are. I can feel it. And a car passed us. And on the back of the license plate, it said storm.
wow.
And I was like, this is just, I mean, sometimes the universe just smacks you right in the face with it.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's like, yeah, you're in it right now. You're in that
yeah,
storm, but there is a rainbow ahead. I think a lot of
yeah,
times people get lost in the storm.
yeah,
You can also, like with the cloud, when things aren't going so well, you don't have to have it over you the whole time. Just like if I tell my kids this all the time, if something is not going great in your life and you're having a tough time with it, don't deny yourself the things that are going well because think you need to punish yourself for some reason.
yeah,
Like if you're having a tough time with a friend group at school, and then you have a great moment where you just had this awesome thing happen, don't downplay it because you're having a celebrate the wins wherever they come.
Yeah, that's great. One of the founders of my one of my female organizations, Entreprenista, said that, you have to celebrate whatever wins that come your way, and it's true. That's great advice for your children too, of any age. I think I'm going to share that with my son this weekend as well. I like that. I like that one.
Somebody told me, and I talked to this about the person I'm talking to you about now last week on the podcast, but
Yeah.
the best way to show your kids, who they should be, to pass lessons to them, is through the example of how you treat yourself. And I pass lessons all the time. And I'm like, this is to make sure, when you're doing this, always helping them disassociate from that. And if you want something, you associate, giving them everything I can. But I do think it's true that one of the things I didn't do earlier on in my life as a dad was honor myself and take care of myself the way that I needed to, health wise, energy wise, having hobbies. And I think it's so important to honor your children by taking care of yourself.
Yeah, the self-care is one that often it just gets, put low on the totem pole, right? Or, low priority. And it's that old image where we say, if the oxygen came down in a plane, the instructions are put the mask on yourself and then put it on children that, you can't be of any use better. But it's a challenging balance, for young families, but it's one I think that if you have the consciousness about it, then you already have ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's true. How do you feel like you lived your life in a way that you feel like you passed along good lessons to your kids?
I think they're wonderful human beings, um, and um, and from their life experiences that were so uncommon here in the United States. I mean, there's so many children in so many other countries that pain us so deeply right now for what they're experiencing and what they're having to live through. Um, it's just so clear to me because my photographer on this trip to Rioja, his partner is from the Ukraine, and she also works in photography and was helping um, during the week. And just to hear her direct testimonials, is very just, hits you right there. You're not reading it in a newspaper. It's, someone who's telling you. So, I think with my children, they're all wonderful human beings that have lived through a very uncommon trilogy of tragedies that, don't usually happen to the average American. So I think that has heightened their awareness of certain things to appreciate in life.
I love that. I love that you just have this feeling about your kids. You can feel it on the other end that the most important thing happened. They're all good human beings.
Yeah.
That's ultimately what more could you want than that for your children?
Yeah, I think it's true, Rich, because you hear again, that's part of living rich. Like I think what is rich? It's abundance, it's good, it's wellness. When we want something to be rich, rich soil or rich mineral. And that is just really true. You hear so many crazy stories of how people have gone awry with their value system or their ethics or their morals.
So, as somebody who's had so much success in business, as an author, you working with the government, I mean, so much success. I like to give everybody, and you saw it with you, Everett, three things, and to have them put them in the order that they think they are in importance to having success in life. And those three things are adaptability, work ethic, and passion.
Interesting. If I was researching, I might ask you, why did you pick those three? But I'll answer first, but I'd love to know why you picked those three. Definitely passion, you know, um, let your passion drive you and everything else will fall into place, is a mantra that I've said in the past. The second, work ethic. I have a very strong work ethic. And the third, I guess, would be adaptability. There's times when you have to pivot, and it's
Mhm.
okay.
I picked those three
So,
because when I was at my lowest, I told you I wrote a book, which I never
okay.
released, but the book was to help
Nice.
me through that moment. And every chapter
Nice.
was a reminder of who I was. And I wrote a chapter, and it was like, these are the three things that have always led to your success in everything. And being a baseball player that played in college and being a stand-up comedian. And they were those three. It was passion. I had to have a passion for it. It was work ethic, which I've always had my whole life. And it was adaptability, being able to change and adjust based on what was thrown at me. So that's where that came from. It came from the book that I was writing and just seeing it in my own success throughout my life. And my order was, and it's starting to change, but
Okay.
it was adaptability first,
Okay.
work ethic second, and passion third. Because passion's a no, I have to have passion for sure. But so many people, and I coach a lot of people who have a lot of passion
Yeah. Yeah.
and it goes nowhere because they don't know how to, they take action and something doesn't go the way that they hoped it would and they're done. They don't adapt. They don't have the ability to adapt. And then that messes
Mm.
up their work ethic. And then I have other clients who don't know how to be, but they know how to do. They do all the time. That's just action, action. That's work ethic without adaptability. So to me, it's at least for now, my list still stands adaptability, work ethic, passion. But after talking to Everett and when he laid it out from a creative standpoint, and you, and then there was a person that I interviewed last week, and she said the same thing Everett did. She started with passion. I think she went work ethic second and adaptability third too. And I'm like, oh, maybe I kind of need to relook at this a little bit.
Yeah, I like those three after you've explained the rationale for the three of them, but they do work hand in hand, they do work together. But
Do you think there's something I'm missing? Is there a fourth?
no, I don't think there's a fourth. I think a lot of things come in trilogies anyway. So I think those three are make sense. They definitely make sense.
So let's go to the future. You're 100 years old. You've lived the best possible life from here to then. What does that version of you tell you you need to do to get there?
Stay authentic. Authenticity is so important to me. Even now, it became trendy. When you were talking with Everett about, you know, comic, comic and stand up is, kind of stamped in time. And I was like, hanging up things about authenticity, way before now that it's become, trending. So, aligning with Rioja that's steeped in authenticity and in their definition of place and their wines. Um, and passionate. I think, passionate about what you believe in and what you stand for is so very, very important. Um, and, family and showing up, I think, staying loyal to what you believe in and who you are and who you want to align with and what you want to align with. I think it's so important right now too, because in many ways, we need grassroots movements to be happening.
And we need connectivity. We are
Yeah.
so disconnected from each other, and there's not a lot of ways that we interact. When I drive around my neighborhood, I grew up in a different era. I know things have changed. I get it, but I just don't see anybody outside.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a whole other conversation that I would love to have too, because it really is a question to pause, to disconnect from the noise, from the digital, to really ground ourselves, to be present, whether you're present with yourself or with dining partners or at home, sharing appetizers with guests or friends. I had another colleague of mine who founded a group called the Overachievers, and she talked about, nobody rings the doorbell now. Like it's offensive and scary if you hear your doorbell, being rung outside of Halloween,
Right. It's
but
who's
that,
there? Yeah.
people text someone, you text them, and it really is creating I think a lower energetic level of communication.
Totally. People don't even leave messages. Friends of mine that are under 40, if they call you and hang up, that means they want you to call them back. There's no
Yeah,
message. And then you
yeah,
say, I don't want to say anymore because now I know the rules. But I just say, well, you need
yeah,
a message. They go, no, if I call, then that means I want you to call me back. I don't leave a message. Messages are for old people. So,
yeah, and it's concerning, because there is elder wisdom in
yes,
an old vine, an
we
old
don't tap
vine
into
of
the
wisdom.
elders anymore. It's so true. Where are the
Yeah.
elders? We need the elders. Okay, so aside from the book, which we'll put a link into how to order the book in the notes, how will people find out about this business when it releases? Is there something I can lead them to?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Business wise, I'm on LinkedIn and there's kind of like summary of my journey and my life. And then on Instagram, I'm more present B2C on Instagram. And so nothing that I do is a paid partnership. Everything that I publish there is based on what I believe in or my research or my experience. So, on both of those channels, we'll be making announcements about, our next amazing collections from Rioja that we'll be bringing in Q1 and the team behind it. So I'm really excited about that. So those are the two primary places. And then I have a website, anafabiano.com. So anybody can reach out to me there and find me there if they're looking for a private event or a master class or wine dinner or, what might be.
The old comedian in me still can't resist this joke from earlier when you said that the US was not a wine country, it was beer and spirits, and then
And
it turned
Coca-Cola.
into becoming a number one. And I have to say that I really attribute a lot of that to Kathy Lee and Hoda. I just, and I actually have met and talked. They're both lovely human beings, and they've made their own jokes about wine over and over again. But they always had that wine in the morning, every single morning. It
Yeah.
was so fun. They used to be like, "Oh my God, two friends hanging out having wine."
Yeah. Yeah. And it has a role, right? It has a purpose and it had cause and effects and that have happened now. It snowballed, which is nice.
It's like food. It's food, wine, family. They all kind of intermingle. Like food is also cared for, and I feel the same way. Like the energy goes into it, and then it finds its way to your plate. And wine is the same way. And when things are flowing, it's the energy kind of works through the food and the wine and in the cover. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing if you allow yourself the peace to relax and just enjoy it.
Yeah, very much so. And again, I'll just punctuate that great perspective that wine is an agricultural product. It's something that comes from the vine. So that's very important to honor that. And that cultures of wine have been created over extensive periods of time, and they're not something that can be manufactured or fabricated. With technology and money, you can make wine anywhere, but you can't fabricate a wine culture.
And the history. This has been so wonderful. I'm so happy you were on the podcast. I hope you had a good time.
Yes, it was wonderful, Rich, and I'm really starstruck by you and Everett, and being a Jersey girl and talking about all those great Jersey artists and Everett's path and his journey too, and his easy breezy way of such a grandmaster and just the synergy of the two of you was like Graciano and Tempranillo.
He's
It was
amazing, but so
amazing.
are you. Your story is also
So
amazing. And there are a lot of people who are going to find this interview the one that they're like, oh my God, that was so great. And I love learning the history of Rioja and wine. And that woman was spectacular. You're going to have the same response from somebody at some point on the podcast. They're going to be like, I remember when she was on. It was fantastic.
well,
So
it's wonderful. Thank you for having me very
it
much.
was a pleasure. This has been Living Rich Sirop. We'll see you next time.